All right, so I'm not going to put this file up online. I wanted to show you what I figured out, and I'm very happy with this. So I've written a script that should be pretty exciting to many people because I'm using a kind of API key so I can just text prompt whatever I want to change my models to do. So initially what I do is I go in and I just say, go online, find a sculpture, and it found Snøhetta's National Memorial Museum Pavilion, and it chose that as a tall, thin model to give me some basic ideas, and it gave me some configuration files that would match that data that would feed into my type of scripts. So that was kind of nice. So I put that in, and that's basically just an initializing script that sets all the defaults and gets everything up and running, finds a base, can do more if you want, but I'm going to override all this. This is just to train my GPT to get it sort of thinking. And then the next node, which is just insane, this is just an on-off of all 10 things. This is the killer node. So this is where you have to put in your own OpenAI. I'm not using, actually, I don't think I'm using GPT. I think I'm using just 4.0 mini. So I have to get this one's, I'm going to beef this one up a bit as 1B and make sure I can go to 5.2. I think it'll run a lot faster and have a lot more details. But right now it's just defaulting to OpenAI and mini. I then have an override and append that I can take all the data coming in from, forget this because this is the end thing that I'm playing with. We'll get to this. What you'll see here is I have a bunch of different versions of things that are made that are basically architectures that look at that original sculpture and then use these text prompts, one of which is the Snøhetta, so it looks closest to it, but it's got a lot of funk in it because I like to put in a lot of funk. So you'll see these models here. Whenever I print one, I get kind of a model design like this, which is close to what it is. But I can start to blast it. These ones here that are more subtle or have the style of Zaha Hadid applied to it, and then Frank Gehry is really the one that blows it out of the water and does all this crazy stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take all those guys and I'm just going to hide them for now because they're not important. So they're gone. And what we have is this little model of what's happening. So this script will override. It will append that configuration file to start. This is what I have to click on to get all my geometries. My battery's low, which is strange. Hang on a second. Always the case. So basically, hopefully we have good volume here. I can append those, or I can replace. I could just replace with those if I want. If I want to override that mode and just go replace totally with that text, that's fine. If I want to append that past text, then I'll put in the append. But I can decide what I want to do with that. Every time I do anything, it's going to take a little while to load because we've got a lot of stuff going on farther downstream. But this is the initial case that I can slide through and change this model pretty quickly. Give it a second to load. It had to read all that override, and I think it's appending and overriding, which is not great. No, it's I shouldn't have appended the original, but I did. It's going to make a slight alter on this one, but I have to wait for the full thing to read. What it is these states in and states out come from the script before, and then they go into the script after. So yeah, it's a heavy script to play with, but if you have a little patience, you can do it. And there we go. We actually went to the append, and we can see the append model is this one, which uses the original data and then puts this one in to append it into a different shape, which is kind of nice. We've got some pretty good details. It's a basic twisting tower. I mean, anybody could write it in a different way, but what I like is I could just click through this, enumerate through this gate to get any one of these, and I have a seed of up to whatever, an infinite amount of iterations of what I want to do with this. So that's what's exciting. This is where I kind of function and bake, and that's where I was just playing with these toggles and baking through. So once you get that one running, you got a state out that's putting out all this juicy stuff, telling you what you merged, what you overrode in your configuration files and your special file that's going in, but that's just an information one. No geometry yet, but if we take a look here, we've got basically the planes and the floor plates and everything that's made up from our GPT text prompt. So pretty cool. We're getting our level planes, we're getting our outer floor curves, we're getting our atrium curves. We're getting nothing really solid yet, but we're getting planes and curves to drive this. Now you could go about and do Grasshopper this way, but you just take styles. You're basically going to build an architecture that's kind of exciting, very exciting. Really exciting. I'm not seeing who's watching today, but I'm pretty exciting. So the next one is the outer shell massing. So if I click that, it's going to put on the outer shell, which is kind of a nice geometry if you take a look at it. It's giving me a lot of stuff, but basically it's putting this nice little wedge that's going to Boolean difference off the side. That's got some elegant, solid, beautiful curves. And there's another one to pair it here. So I have two that I can actually do. I can do a floor plate, I can do a atrium void brep, and I can do a massing brep. And then I kind of wish this was the massing brep, but this is the outer shell brep. So between this and that part, and then the final floor plates, I've got some pretty cool geometry here that I could just bake. And that's mainly the geometries that I bake to get my solids, my facade, and my floors in. So that's an elegant curve system that I could just take from any style on anything, and that's the versatility of using OpenAI. So if I can get in here and you can get an OpenAI key running in here, you could type whatever you want to influence, just pure text, and you can use GPT to generate the text even better, but those texts know this script. Now, sadly to say, you have to write a pretty functional script that does the basic algorithmic modeling for something you're trying to mimic online, but then you can modify it. So that's the bonus of this. So there's all our little elements that are being drawn out. And then I go to a facade and panels, and you'll see this is at 1.6 seconds now, but I've already made all those panels that have fit that surface. Really beautiful outer breps, and I have the mullion breps, which are here, these little tiny solid edges that go all the way around. I don't know, I have the panel outlines, which I don't really care about because they're building the mullions, and the grid curves are, I think, the ones building the panel breps. So I got my panels and my mullions. There we go. Oh, and there's so much awesomeness here. I shouldn't get ahead of myself, but it's very easy to do. You can panel override. You can have a limit. You can control this so it really doesn't blast and blow up on you. But up here, I have my first interesting selection mode. So I can choose all, range, nth, random count, and probability. So this node is written so well that I can toggle from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and go through all of these elements and then control those by what inputs I put down here. Now, it's pretty explanatory, but I have a really nice README file that I go back to that will tell me every detail. If I want to have a range of 4 to 10, if I want to have specific skipping of the nth element, if I want to have only 40 panels made, you can see that here as I go into it and the brep panels, all of them, what this next node is going to do is use all of that selection mode to come up with the geometry that I actually want to do. So what I'm going to do is just go in here and say, well, maybe I didn't want 40. Let's see which one we're on. We're on 4, which is probability. So basically, I'm just playing off of the probability of 19% of the panels will actually populate. But I'm going to do, no, I'm not going to go too high. I'm going to go 35% of the panels, but keep in mind that's a decimal. So 0.35. We've got to wait a little bit for that because that's got to run a probability of all the panels that it's selected, and it's got to perforate all the holes, which is going to come after this. So just bear with me here for a second. Obviously, going to slow my script down double, so I probably have to wait 2 minutes because I just told to double the panels. But like I said, I can't do anything when I'm in this mode. But this tool, this script, like this is the piece of music I've been writing. This is what I've been coming to understand using C# to write hundreds of lines of workable scripts. And there we go. It should be running now. So instead of what we had before on these surfaces, mullions and panel breps, we now see that I've selected there 35% of the breps. And in doing so, I then have another toggle up here of going from grid, quasi, jitter, or noise to place the cutters. And so the cutters go into each one of these nodes in the same type of way. I've got really nice presettings here if you want to go through and know exactly what needs to be input. But I don't think I'm giving this file away. I think I've spent, a good day, about 24 hours, slept, that I've gotten to this. And so what I have is these perforated panels, and there they are. They're all perforated. What beautiful geometry. And they're done in a pattern that I have really nice control in the stream filter of different styles that I want to do. Now, I don't want to wait for a whole other bake again, so I'm going to be happy with what that is. Then as we move on, we go to the details of the frames, and we have a frame type that goes in that basically puts a pipe, a rectangle, a sweep, a box, or a ring. I'm finding the pipe and the ring move pretty fast, so I've chosen ring, and I've set all these to certain sizes that work really nicely to put in whatever portion of these that I want that are rung through and have the edges. Now, I'm not quite sure if the frame breps are perfect here. They do get a little funky. I've tried to fix them. They're kind of like a system that works. I don't know if it's doing a solar thing. I don't know if it's getting a roof on there, but basically this one is one that I might have to toggle and play with a little bit. That's about the gist of nearly all of it, except I have a really good level of detail that I can go into and control. I'm being very careful here with 300 max items per bucket load, and I'm giving credit to the source of where I had this, and I'm giving credit that the script's coming from Wickerson Studios, not Snowhetta. And this all brep appearance of it should be able to print. It's running because I just tried to choose it. I hadn't chosen this one yet. So we're into the 8th, and there's only a 9th and 10th, which I have off right now because they're really just functional past the geometry. But this is interesting that it's taking a minute. Just by clicking the node, just by bouncing something, it has to run the whole script again. You see there's 11.7 seconds here, but in the end, our whole script, I think, is a 1.9 minutes, and then maybe 2 minutes for the final portion of it. But I took those off. So this should actually run pretty fast, but here we are waiting again because it must have bumped something. But the level of detail on these pieces and thinking of them driven by an initial prompt that sets up the geometry that can be modified, then you're in this position that, there you go. You've got all that geometry on top, which is geometry on top of this wonderful stuff that was coming out of the perforated panels. So I can click on there and you'll see the perforated panels on top of what was actually there as all the breps. So I've got those two selected, which makes for a pretty interesting thing. Now, the last two objects I've got off because when I turn them on, these are really about computing metrics, pushing out breps in the final assembly, writing files to your computer, putting it into your exports and having it on your computer. So those ones take a little bit of time when you run them, and you got to be careful the order of when you run them. So you activate them here by hitting enable, and then you run them here. And I'm afraid, okay, I just lost my geometry again. There it is. And then the final one I put in just for the sake of doing it was a bake geometry that would bake everything if I wanted to. I have limitations of what I do. I can give them prefixes. I can give them layering names. But this is just an organizer system that you would then have to turn on. And at this point, I'm thinking, should I be using breps or should I be using meshes? The design isn't great, but that is a beautiful script, in my opinion, that runs through an API key and does everything I need it to do. If I jump on here, and if I go here and show, oh my goodness, it's not going to take 2 minutes just to, yeah. If I just go here and hit show, you'll see the other forms that I popped up just for fun. And there's our awesome little tool machine that makes organic influence geometries of really good level of design detail of a basic architectural facade structure or form. If you want to know more, then reach out to me, Michael Wickerson at Wickerson Studios. I'm going to cease to put things up on my website at wickersonstudios.com. I'm now just going into business for myself, and I'll work for anybody that's interested in this type of work. So thanks very much for watching. I'm going to shut down my stream and stop this recording.